You know, I never did get to make level guides for the Rundown 1 levels since I wasn't doing YouTube back then. Heck, I didn't even do videos of the Rundown 1 levels in general, and it's really a shame. Those were pretty fun levels, and the time of GTFO was just so much different. The skill level of people, the strategies, it was just a much different time. And it's really a shame that I can't turn back the clock to the early days of GTFO. I'm sorry, what was that? You're saying that this R5D1 is basically R1D1, just a bit harder and more complicated, and things have been changed up a bit? Really? Dang, well, I suppose that's as good as I'm gonna get, isn't it? So, hey, I'll take it. Let's take a trip down memory lane then and see what's different in this version and talk about everything you're going to need to know in order to beat the Rundown 5 version of R1D1. Hello everybody, Professor Scaly here, hoping you're all having an absolutely wonderful day, and welcome to the R5D1 level guide, Even Deeper, also known as Reliving the Past. In this level, I highly recommend you bring along with you a bio tracker, a seafoam launcher, and 2 sniper sentries. The bio tracker, well, if you played R1D1 way back in the day, you already know why I'm recommending this tool. And that's because you're going to have to deal with shadows, giant shadows, and if you go for the extreme objective, a few shadow scouts as well. At any level where you have to deal with shadows, bio tracker basically becomes a necessity. The seafoam launcher, you're not going to use this like you normally do when it comes to, sea foaming and then mining doors to buy yourself time during alarm doors and stuff, since you actually can't really do that in this level. But rather, you're going to be using the seafoam launcher to seafoam enemies. That way you can more safely melee kill them. In this level, resources are a bit tight. Yeah, there are a lot of extra zones you can actually go to collect resources that you normally don't have to go into, but it can add a lot of time to the total completion time of this level. And I know a lot of people don't really like to spend too much time here, since you could very easily fail right at the end and maybe waste 2 to 3 hours if you take things really slow. So because of that, we have to be very, conservative with what we have, which means not waking up a bunch of rooms and waking up multiple scouts. Well, that's where an issue sort of lies. You have to deal with a lot of charger scouts, shadow scouts, as well as a fair amount of giant shadows if you do the extreme objective in this level. And I know these are enemies that a lot of people struggle when it comes to trying to stealthily melee kill them. Charger scouts, you have to have 2 people hit it in the back almost at the same time. If your timing is off, the thing will wake up or it'll go invincible and wake everything up. Shadow scouts, it can be hard to see the outline. Trust me, I still struggle seeing their outline from time to time. So trying to hit that head with a fully charged hit sometimes isn't the easiest thing to do. Or heck, let's talk about the shadow giants. You might have to go through a small narrow corridor and there might be a shadow giant right in the middle of it and you can't go around it. And you can't afford to shoot it because if you do, you're going to wake up 3 more of them from behind you. So you try to go for the melee kill. Well, what happens if somebody sprints or somebody's swing is mistimed or somebody misses and that thing just backhands all of you and drops you to the floor immediately, bringing your run to an end. It's not a good thing. So to make things a little bit easier, we're going to use a seafoam launcher. It doesn't consume a whole lot of seafoam to actually freeze these enemies in place. And if you freeze them in place with seafoam, you can very easily melee kill them without risking failing or waking up other enemies that might be nearby. It can also be useful in a few other situations when it comes to alarm doors and choke points, but I'll talk more about that when it's actually relevant. And then finally, we have the 2 sniper sentries. I mentioned earlier that you can't really shut doors and mine or seafoam them in this level, and that's because a lot of the locations of these alarm doors will make it so that where enemies spawn from, there's not a single door they have to get or go through to get to you. It's just a bunch of open room dividers or security doors that you obviously can't shut behind you. And because of that, using mines and seafoam isn't going to be an effective strategy for these alarm doors, so we have to rely on sentries instead. The thing is though, a lot of the enemies that spawn during these alarm doors are going to be powerful enemies like chargers or maybe some hybrids or very rarely even some giants. And things like auto burst sentry aren't really the most effective. They could help out with the smaller, weaker enemies, but again, resources are a little bit scarce, especially tool refill, so we can't just spend auto burst sentry all the time because those aren't really the most effective when it comes to, or the most efficient, I should say, when it comes to tool refills. Sniper sentries will deal with these enemies a lot faster. They can deal with them from a further distance, which can take advantage of the very big open rooms that you will be going through. And overall, I find 2 sniper sentries will help out tremendously with pretty much every single alarm door you have to do throughout this entire level. So this would be the strategy, or this would be the loadout that I would recommend to you and your team if you're doing a D1 completion, whether it's just the main objective or you're going for extreme as well. Now, before we drop down to the level and talk zone by zone, there are a few last things I want to very quickly mention. And I know we're a few minutes into this guide already, and I haven't even dropped down to the level itself, but please be patient with me. These are very important things to take note of. First of all, I did already say it quite a few times, but resources are very tight. However, they don't have to be. There are many zones in this level, and there are a lot of zones you actually don't have to go into to get your completion. But most of those doors are going to be full team scans, no alarms, and while there are a lot of powerful enemies inside of those zones, if you can stealth through them perfectly or just, get through them without waking up scouts and stuff, you'll come out with more resources than you went in with, which is very good for you and your team. However, it's not necessary. You can just go along the main route that you have to take to beat the level, and assuming you play very, very well and you don't wake up pretty much any of the scouts and you don't wake up a bunch of rooms left and right and waste your resources, you will have enough to beat the entire level. However, if you're not as confident in your skills or you do make mistakes and you find yourself running lower than you want to be when you're about to do an alarm door, don't be afraid to backtrack, go into a zone that has a full team scan on it, go in there and get the resources, and then go back to where you left off. It might be the difference between a successful run and a failure run. Another thing is be very cautious of the scouts in this level. Every single scout, so the regular ones, the charger scouts, and the shadow scouts, while they will still spawn in a few regular strikers and shooters, most of the enemies that spawn in because of them are going to be chargers, and very rarely actually you can get giant chargers, which means you're going to be spending more ammunition. I know a lot of people like to just simply melee kill the scout waves, that way they don't have to spend too many resources on it. However, you're not going to be doing that when about 10 or so chargers are coming after you. And if you do try it, well, say hello to Floor Senpai because you're going to be meeting him very, very quickly. So be very cautious of these scouts. They're much more dangerous than previous scouts in previous levels. And finally, fog repellers are quite helpful throughout this entire level. I know we all love it when we find maybe, you're a glow stick person, or you're a long range flashlight person, or C-foam grenades, or explosive mines. I know those are like really high priority for a lot of people, but fog repellers are the top priority for pretty much this entire level. A lot of these alarm doors are going to be very foggy areas, so enemies can very easily sneak up behind you and beat you down. So having fog repellers to disperse the fog will help out a bit. And if you're going for the extreme objective, you want to have fog repellers. I know you might find like 5 C-foam grenades and you're really, really tempted to take all of them with you, but trust me, having 2, even 3 people always have fog repellers on hand is very, very beneficial, and it will make this level quite a bit easier. So do keep that in mind as you play throughout it. But now that I've got that out of the way, we can actually drop down to the level itself and start talking about every single zone one by one. When you drop down to the level, you'll see that your main objective is to find a reactor terminal and use it to shut down the reactor. And we have a bit of distance we need to travel to get to it. Inside Zone 68, there are no resources waiting for you, but there will be a fair amount of enemies. So go through, kill all these guys off, and at the far end of the zone, you will find a security door to Zone 69. And this security door is going to be a Class 5 alarm door. I don't really need to show a map overlay for this, as there's only 3 rooms in the zone, so the only place they could spawn is in the room where you drop down to the level, room A, and they're going to be coming all the way to you through that long corridor. No doors you can shut, by the way. So the best way to set up for this, in my opinion, is to set both of your sniper sentries basically right where the room divider is between B and C, facing all the way down that long corridor. That way, as enemies spawn in and they come towards you, your sniper sentries are going to shoot them and deal with them. And if you want to make it even easier, you can have one person who has a long-range weapon positioned next to sniper sentries, also focusing on the enemies. So you do the full team scan, one person runs over, and then you have 3 people dealing with the scans, and then 2 sentries and 1 person dealing with all the enemies coming after you. And this will make it a lot easier to deal with the scan. Once all the enemies are dead, you can head into Zone 69. Inside of Zone 69, you're going to be greeted by your first of many Charger Scouts, as well as a decent amount of other enemies with it. You'll also be able to find 4 security doors in here, one in the southwest corner to 73, one to the west to 74, one to the east to 75, and one to the north to Zone 70. Zone 73 is under lockdown. You can't go in here until you finish the main objective, and when you do finish the main objective, the last thing you want to do is go in here, so ignore this place completely. As for where you need to go, well, you need to go to Zone 70. That's the way that leads to the reactor. However, the security door to it is unpowered, so you're going to need to get a power cell to plug into the generator in the room to return power to it so you can actually access it. And as you could probably already guess, that power cell will either be in Zone 74 or Zone 75. So use the terminal in the zone to figure out which one of the two zones you need to go into. Both of them are full team scans. They'll have a fair amount of resources in them, as well as a lot of enemies, as well as a lot of giant strikers and shooters, so be cautious when you go through them. So just go in, get your resources, get the power cell, and then come right back out. Now, since both 74 and 75 are just full team scans, you can very easily go into both of them to collect resources. However, I recommend you do not open up the second one until you do the alarm door to Zone 70. That way, when you do that alarm door, you only have 2 spawn locations and not 3. Speaking of spawn locations though, let's look at a map overlay for the security door to Zone 70 because this is going to be a Class 6 alarm door. As you can see with the map overlay, enemies will be able to come from the south no matter what, and then they'll come from either the west or the east depending on which one you had to open up. And when it comes to setting up for this, well, you're going to have one sniper sentry towards the south facing towards that open security door. That way when enemies come in through it, the sniper sentry will be able to shoot it as it runs towards you. And then the second one, you can either have it positioned like near the security door to the west or the east. That way it shoots enemies as they either are about to walk towards the security door or as they pass by it and they're coming into the room with you. There are many different viable sentry locations for this room, so just make sure wherever you're putting it, it has plenty of time to lock on enemies and start shooting at them as they run by. And with your sentries in position, you can then start the alarm door, do all 6 sets of scans, kill off all the enemies that are left over, and then you can either head into Zone 70 to continue on with the level, or you can head into the other zone to collect the resources in there, and then continue on with the rest of the level. Up to you and your team. Once everybody is ready to progress, you can all head on into Zone 70, and in here you'll be greeted by another Charger Scout as well as a regular Scout in a room filled with enemies. And not only do you have to deal with all these enemies, you'll also see that there are 3 more security doors. One to the west, which leads to Zone 76, one to the east, which leads to Zone 79, and one to the north that leads to Zone 71. Now, ultimately, you need to go to Zone 71 to get to the reactor. However, you need a key card to get into this door, and that key card will either be located in 78 or 81. And if you know how to do some basic math and you take a moment or two, you'll realize that means you have to go through 3 different zones to get your key card. So there's 3 zones to the west and 3 to the east. Now, while that might sound like a whole lot I need to talk about, thankfully, I don't. Because the thing is, the 3 zones to the west and the 3 to the east are very similar to each other. Yes, the room layouts are quite a bit different, but the security doors you have to do, the alarm door, the type of enemies, all of that is basically a perfect copy. Even the way you set up for the 2 different alarm doors is very similar. So I'm just going to talk about the western half with 76, 77, 78, and then I'm just going to ignore the eastern half. But just keep in mind, anything I say over here applies to that half as well. So, it's the same thing. I'm not purposely leaving out information just to make a guide shorter. I'm big braining this and making it so I don't have to talk for as long. So let's head over to the west and go to the security door to Zone 76. This security door is just a full team scan, and inside you're going to find 2 more regular scouts as well as a fair amount of regular strikers and shooters and some baby strikers. So have fun dealing with this entire room. In here you'll also find 2 more security doors, one that leads to Zone 77 and one to 78. Now if you're a young, naive prisoner who hasn't been around for a while, you might assume you could just head straight to 78 and you don't even have to bother with 77. Well, joke's on you, the security door to Zone 78 requires a key card that will always be located inside Zone 77, which, yes, that means you need to go collect a key card just so you can get a key card, just so you can continue on with the main objective. I'm pretty sure somebody at 10 Chambers headquarters was laughing their butt off when they were designing this level. So we're going to have to head to the west to Zone 77 security door, which is another full team scan, and head in there to find the key card. In 77 though, there will be a birther, baby strikers, regular strikers and shooters, and giant strikers and shooters, so be very cautious as you go through here, because you do not want to waste ammunition by waking up these rooms. Thankfully though, the only things you actually have to kill in this zone is everything that's in the very first room, because those enemies will be pulled in during the alarm door to Zone 78 if you do not kill them. So if the birther is in here, C-foam her, and then deal with her before she can get off of a spawn. If anything else is in here though, just deal with them instead. Also, another thing too is if an enemy is really close to any of the doors that connect to room A, you're probably going to want to deal with them too, because if a wave spawns in that room and breaks down the door, and there's an enemy sleeping near that door, that enemy will also be woken up as well. So if the birther is right next to them, deal with her as well. But if the birther is all the way in the far back room in a far off corner, you don't have to worry about whatsoever. You can just leave it be. So go in here, kill the enemies you do have to deal with, collect your resources, get your key card, and once you have everything you need, leave the zone, go back to the security door to zone 78, put the key card in, and you'll see that you have to do a class 5 alarm door. As you can see with the map overlay, there's two main directions enemies can come from, the west or the east, and you have 2 sniper sentries, so position 1 in both directions. It doesn't matter exactly where you put it, just make sure you position it in a place where it can lock onto enemies and actually shoot them before it runs all the way past it, and you should be pretty good. As for the western side with all those doors, don't worry too much about them. If you do have deployable mines, you could definitely place them on those doors as it will help out a bit, but don't C-foam them. Like, even if you place a mine on it, don't C-foam it, because C-foaming a mine or C-foaming a door without a mine is more harmful than it is beneficial. And even if you do place a mine on it, it's not going to buy you a whole lot of time. And to me, I find that saving the tool for later is going to be better for you. So just place on the sentries, place on consumable mines if you do have them, and then when you're ready, you can initiate the scan. All 5 sets of scans during this alarm are going to be full team scans though, so make sure nobody dies at any point, or if somebody does die, you get them up quickly, as you're going to need everybody alive throughout the entire thing. Once all the scans are done and all the enemies are dead, you can head into zone 78. Now, if you weren't a big fan of how there was a birther and a bunch of giants in zone 77, you're not going to be a fan of zone 78 either, because in here there are going to be chargers, giant chargers, as well as a tank. And to make things even worse, this zone is pitch black darkness, which means it's even harder to see anything in here. On the bright side though, you don't have to kill anything. No matter where they spawn at, you don't have to kill them. Unless if they're standing in a doorway, or maybe they're standing right next to a box that has like a padlock on it and you don't have lock melters. In which case, find some lock melters or deal with the enemy. But you could just stealth your way through here, collect your resources, get your key card, and once you have all that, you can just leave. Go back to the security door to zone 78, and then you could put that in and then get ready for that alarm door. And that's all there really is to these 2 side segments. Again, the eastern half is basically the exact same as I described. Obviously, the alarm door is a little bit different, but it's the same thing. They come from 2 general directions, the west or the east, so you just have to have 1 sniper sentry in both directions, and that's it. Now, when it comes to the security door to zone 71 itself though, things are going to get a little bit more difficult. The security door to zone 71 is going to be a class 3 sustained cluster alarm, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's a sustained scan that's also sort of a cluster scan at the same time. No, don't worry, you don't have to do 8 small sustained scans during one wave. It's not quite that crazy. The first set of scans is just going to be a single small sustained scan. Set 2 is going to be 3 small sustained scans, and set 3 is going to be 3 more. So in total, you have to do 7 small sustained scans. However, you can get lucky, and sometimes they overlap with each other, so you can get multiple done at the same time. But of course, these are all sustained scans, so everybody has to be alive and in the same scan in order for them to progress. As for setting up for it, well, let's look at a map overlay. In this one that I have right here, obviously I have both the west and the eastern half open, which is not what your situation is going to look like. So you only have to worry about enemies coming from the south, and then either the west or the east, depending on which side they came from. And the way to set up for it, again, is 2 directions, 2 sniper sentries. And you're starting to notice a pattern here. Have your one towards the south, facing towards enemies as they enter the room, that way it shoots them. And then one to the west or the east, that way it shoots enemies as they are entering into the room, or as they have entered and they're starting to come towards you. And then that should be good. Mines or C-foam, you don't really have anything you can do with those for the most part. It's really just going to come down to your team being coordinated and working together. Biotracker, ping enemies, or at least give callouts if you can't ping them at the current moment. Everybody watch each other's backs, just shoot enemies and work together. And make sure you call out which scan you're going to. I've had a few runs where 2 people run to a scan that's all the way up at the top and 2 people run to the scan all the way at the bottom, and then you're just wasting time because of it. Analyze where the scans are, do the ones that are more out in the open or further down in the fog, that way you can get rid of them first, and then go towards the ones that are in better position second. That way, when enemies are actually hitting you a bit harder, you're in a more ideal situation where you can see what you're doing, or at least maybe enemies are only coming from one direction. If you need to run around the room a bit to sort of funnel enemies to make it so they're only coming from one direction again and not surrounding you, then do that as well. There's no immediate rush to finishing the scan. But once all the scans are finished, every single enemy is dead, you can go back, pick up your sentries, and then you can either head into Zone 71, or if you're really desperate for resources, go into the other side zone that you didn't open up. There are 2 zones you can go into since there are 2 full team scans, and yes, while there are a lot of very powerful and deadly enemies inside of those areas, if you're careful about it, you have 2 zones worth of resources you can collect for free. But once you've done that, or if you don't care to do that, you can open up the security door and head into Zone 71. Inside of here, there will be no enemies. It's a long corridor room, the typical type that you would see right before a reactor room. There'll be some more resources in here, so you can fill up a bit more in here. And at the far end of it, you'll find a security door to Zone 72, which is just going to be a full team scan. So you do the full team scan, and then you can open up the door. Or at least, that's what you could do if you don't want to be prepared. Inside of Zone 72, there will always be a singular tank and 4 giant charges that are all going to automatically wake up a few seconds after the door fully opens. So I would recommend you actually face your sniper sentries at the base of the security door, facing sort of out towards the hallway, that way it shoots enemies from behind as they run out. And when you open that door, you run for it. Run far back, let the sniper sentries assist you a bit, but focus down those giant chargers first. Then when all 4 of them are dead, you can work on killing the tank. Just make sure you spread out a bit, deal with the tank as effectively as it can. Sniper sentries can help out a little bit, assuming they still have ammunition, although they might not at this point. And once the giant chargers in the tank are dead, you're free to go into Zone 72 and explore everything to your heart's content. In here, you're going to find even more resources. You're going to find the reactor terminal, but you're also going to find a bulkhead key, the door control, and the bulkhead door to the extreme sector. Now, if you plan on doing the extreme objective, I would actually recommend you leave all the resources that are in this room in here. Do not pick them up, do not use them, unless if you desperately need resources. In which case, I would actually say go back to an earlier zone instead and get those, because you really do want to leave the resources that are in this room in here until you're actually about to do the reactor shutdown. For those of you who are only doing the main objective though, you can just do the reactor shutdown now. A simple explanation of it, because I'm going to wait till later to go more in depth, you're going to have to just simply type in reactor shutdown. Lights throughout the entire level are going to go out completely. You're then going to be prompted to put in reactor verify and then a code. Once you put that in, some text is going to appear on screen on the monitor, and then it's going to tell you an alarm is being activated, and you're going to have to do a class 5 mixed alarm. During this alarm, only shadows are going to spawn in. They can only come from the south though, so you can just set up your sentries there and then have the biotracker ping them. You do all the scans, and once you finish that sustained scan, your main objective is completed, an extraction scan appears at the beginning of the level, and you need to just book it. Go straight through all the darkness, lights aren't going to come back on whatsoever, and you're going to have to deal with some shadows, as well as a few shadow giants that are going to spawn and chase you as you're going to extraction. Extraction scan takes a little while to finish too, so you're going to have to hold out there a bit, but the resources you get from the reactor should be enough to hold you out to the end of the level. And once you get the scan up to 100%, you are done and you've beaten the level on just the main objective. However, for the rest of those who want to do the extreme objective, we're not going to touch the reactor yet. We're not going to touch the resources inside this zone. Instead, we're going to put the bulkhead key into the door control, select the extreme objective, and then we're going to open up the bulkhead door that leads to Zone 504. Upon entering into Zone 504, you'll see that your extreme objective is to deactivate the air filtration system by using a specific terminal. And this terminal will always be located inside of Zone 507. Which at first doesn't sound like it's too far away from you, but just like everything else in this level, it can't be that simple and there has to be a whole lot more to it, which indeed there is. So starting off in Zone 504, there will always be 2 Shadow Scouts, some regular Shadow Strikers, as well as some giant shadows inside of this room. And if you look up at the ceiling, you'll see a bunch of black cocoons, which means yes, this is a respawn zone and everything you kill in here will come back, including the Shadow Scouts. So the best thing to do is just look at the biotracker, see which way is the safest route to take, and just get to the other side of the room. Doesn't matter if you really kill anything, it doesn't matter if you grab the resources, as you can always get those a little bit later. You just want to get to the security door to Zone 505, do the full team scan for it, and then head into Zone 505 itself. Now in 505, there are going to be quite a few different rooms. I think there's about 13 or 14 total rooms throughout this zone. And in these rooms, there's going to be a fair amount of regular shadows, giant shadows, the zone is pitch black darkness, there's a lot of fog in it, which just overall makes it very difficult for you to see anything. And once again, just like 504, this is going to be a respawn zone, so anything you kill in here will come back. So best thing to do is go into the first room, head to the left through that door. Inside there are usually 2 shadow giants. Kill them, get on the terminal, and use that terminal to ping everything inside the zone. That way you know where the ammo packs are, med packs, tool refills, and you also know where the key card is that you need to get into zone 506. Once you have all of that information, type it in chat so you don't forget, and then just move throughout the zone, go to each of the rooms you need to, collect everything you need, and then go to the far northern end where the security door to zone 506 is waiting for you. This security door is going to be a class 3 stealth scan door, so no alarm tied to it. You do have to do some stealth scans, but as long as none of the scans go underneath the feet of a giant shadow, you should be pretty okay. Once you finish the scans, you can head into zone 506. Inside of zone 506, you'll be greeted by yet another charger scout, a pretty decent amount of enemies, and 3 more security doors. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm starting to get a pretty big sense of deja vu throughout this level. So the security door to the north is the one that'll lead you to 507. The one to the west leads you to 508, and the one to the east leads you to 509. 509's door, however, is currently under lockdown, so you won't be able to access this until you finish the extreme objective. And 507, well, that's where you need to go for the terminal, but there's no power to the door, so you need to go find a power cell and put it in the nearby generator to regain access to 507. So your only option is to head to the west to zone 508, which is going to be a class 6 sustain alarm door. As you can see with the map overlay, there are 2 different rooms that enemies can spawn in, and I've also labeled a specific door to keep open. The reason for that is because you want all 3 of the doors that lead to your room to be preserved for the next alarm door. So we're going to have the far back one open, that way every single enemy will go that way, and it's the furthest distance that enemies have to run, so it'll take them longer to get to you. Then your 2 sniper sentries will be outside in room A near that door, facing towards the south, that way it shoots at enemies as they come across the room. A fair amount of the enemies will be killed by the sentries, and you can deal with the rest by shooting or meleeing them while you do the scans. And once you finish this alarm door, you can head to zone 508. Inside of zone 508, however, you need to be incredibly cautious. In here, there will be a tank, a fair amount of giant chargers and regular chargers, and not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 charger scouts. And these scouts can either be fairly spread apart from each other, making it a bit easier to deal with them, or they're all going to be clustered up in pretty much the same 1 or 2 rooms, making it very hard to actually stealth kill them without waking everything else up. So C-foam grenades or C-foam launcher, use those so you can more safely deal with the charger scouts, as you really cannot afford to wake them up, as you won't have enough resources to do the next alarm door. And then just stealth by pretty much everything else that you can. The only things you really have to kill are the enemies that spawn within the first half of room A, due to the fact that if you get too close to the outside room and shoot, they could potentially get dragged out as well. So deal with them, and then leave everything else alive if you can. The power cell usually spawns within one of the back 2 rooms, so use the terminal in here to ping where it is, get your resources, get the power cell, and get out. With the power cell in hand, you can put it into the generator, and you'll gain access to the security door to zone 507. The security door to zone 507 is going to be a class 1 surge sustain alarm door. So 1 big sustain scan, that's going to take about 1.5 to 2 minutes to finish, somewhere within that range. And because it's a surge alarm as well, you're going to have about 25 enemies all spawning in almost at once, and every time you kill off a few of them, they will almost immediately be replaced. So let's look at a map overlay and start discussing how we can make this a little bit easier. As you can see, enemies will either be coming from the west or they'll be coming from the south, but there's a way to funnel them all so they come from the exact same direction. And that's why we left a door open earlier, so we can do a funnel here. As you see, I have a specific door labeled that you should leave open. This will make it so all the enemies from the west will go through that open door and go along the catwalk portions on the higher tiers of the room, and then they'll come down the staircase that's right in front of you. And then every single enemy that spawns to the south will go up the staircase as well, follow that same route, and go down the stairs to where you are. So you can position your sniper sentries sort of like you can see in the background footage, and these will be able to shoot at enemies from behind as they're going along this path, making it so that you don't have to deal with every single enemy all by yourself with your guns. The other thing you need to do though to set up for this is go back into zone 505 and clear out that first room. Because that area is only 1 room away, enemies that path from that direction will scream in that room, and when they do, they will trigger everything in there and they'll all come after you. And the last thing you want to do during the surge alarm is have shadows and shadow giants coming after you. So go out there, shoot once to just pull the room, and then just wait for the enemies to come in, shoot and kill them inside of 506. And then when that's done, make sure your doors are open and closed how they need to be, place down your sniper sentries, and then you can initiate this alarm. There are a few different locations where this sustained scan can be, but most of them will work with this funnel strategy. I think there's only one, maybe two locations that don't work for it, but even then I have almost never seen anybody get them. It's very, very rare. So I would say 8 out of 10 runs, you should be just fine. Once this alarm door is finished, you can start making preparations to head into zone 507. I say make preparations, by the way, due to the fact that inside of 507 there is going to be a queen birther, as well as a fair amount of baby strikers who will all automatically wake up shortly after you open up that door. So the ideal way to deal with this is to look around for a seafoam trip mine. There's almost always at least 1 or 2 seafoam trip mines somewhere back here, and you're going to want to place it parallel to the security door, sort of like you would with an explosive mine for a blood door. Just place it a little bit higher so none of the baby strikers set it off. Then when you open up the door, you're going to want to hide behind the corner, sort of like you can see my group doing the background footage. And this will make it so all the baby strikers will rush out immediately. You just shoot them as they round the corner, and then you just have to wait for the queen birther herself to rush out. When she does, the seafoam trip mine will seafoam her completely, and you can run around the corner and start shooting her and dealing with the tumors. Most situations, you will not be able to kill her before she breaks out of that seafoam. So if you have a second seafoam trip mine, it's a good idea for one person, whoever's holding onto it, to put it underneath her after a few seconds. That way it re-seafoams her before she births. Or if you don't have that, then having 1 or 2 people who are dedicated to shooting the babies while they're being spawned in can make this go a lot easier. So 2 people focus on the tumors and 2 people focus on the babies, but make sure the people focusing on the babies do shoot the tumors a little bit while she's still seafoamed. Another thing you can do, by the way, is if you have somebody with a sniper rifle or a hell rifle, they can go up above and wait up there. That way when the birther gets seafoamed, they have a top-down view on her, and they can more easily shoot her tumors without having to worry about accidentally shooting their teammates. And if you stick to the strategy, then this queen birther, for the most part, shouldn't be too terribly difficult, assuming you have the ammunition to deal with all of it. And once you finish killing her, you're able to head into zone 507. And in there, you're going to find the terminal you need for your extreme objective. You're also going to find some more resources, as well as a few disinfectant packs, which might seem a little bit weird. After all, we haven't seen any infection into this level up to this point, so why are you now being given disinfectant packs? Well, as you probably could guess, due to the fact that you have to put in a command to deactivate the air filtration system throughout the level, things are going to become infectious. Putting that command into the terminal and finishing the full team scan will finish your extreme objective, but it'll also make it that all the fog in the level will rise up quite a bit and it will become infectious. So you're going to have some fog repellers on you, that way you can get through this without gaining max infection. Don't worry, you don't need a ton of them, because there will be a fog turbine inside of zone 509 which will now unlock after you finish extreme objective. So when you finish the full team scan, run to the security door to 509, the infection won't start piling up too quickly. So get to the door, throw a fog repeller down, do the full team scan, open the door. There can be some shadows and shadow giants inside this zone, so make sure your biotracker gives you a call, or a call if there is some in the first room. If there are, I just say shoot them, biotracker ping them immediately and just get rid of them quickly. Then throw a fog repeller straight across the room because there's a terminal over there, and use that terminal to ping where the fog turbine is. It might be in the first room right next to you, or it might be close by in one of the other rooms. So figure out where it is, and then use your fog repellers to get to that fog turbine. That way you don't gain too much infection. Once you have the fog turbine in hand, you can go throughout the rest of the zone to collect more disinfect packs, as you're going to want as many as you can get. And once you have everything you need, you can start making your way all the way back to zone 72, back to the reactor, because now all that's left to finish is the reactor shutdown sequence itself, and then getting to extraction. On your way back to zone 72, obviously make sure you have the fog turbine with you, you have a few sets of fog repellers with you, and you grab as many disinfect packs as you possibly can. If you have med packs, ammo packs, or tool refills left, I highly recommend you use them now, as ideally you would like all 4 people on your team to have a disinfect, or at least 2, maybe 3 of the people on your team. As even though you have fog repellers and a fog turbine, you will be gaining a lot of infection right towards the end of the level. More on that later. But once you have everything in hand, you can start sneaking your way back through zone 505. Try your best not to alert any of the enemies. And then when you get to zone 504, you're not going to stealth through it, but rather you're going to have to kill everything. Since this room is directly connected to the reactor room, if you try to leave everything alive in here, they will get aggravated and pulled in during the alarm, since enemies who spawn from the north will either scream in there, or if you get too close to the north in the reactor room and you shoot, it will aggravate the enemies inside. So deal with the shadow scouts, C-foam them if you have to, and then when both scouts are dead, probably the easiest thing to do is just fall back to the bulkhead door and then shoot to wake up the whole room, and use the bulkhead door as a choke point and make sure you obviously ping all the shadows. Then when everything is dead, you can go throughout all 504, collect any resources you left behind, and then you can also go back into 72 and collect the resources that you might have left behind in there. And assuming you did leave behind some goodies for you and your team, you should have plenty of health, plenty of ammo, and a decent amount of tool refill for the rest of this level. And then all you have to do is set up for the reactor. So you have two ways enemies can come, the north and the south. The best way to handle this in my opinion is spray C-foam all over the floor near the extreme bulkhead door, since it has a nice little choke point, and then spray it all over the floor near the security door to the south. That way, no matter what direction enemies come from, a few of them will be stuck in place because of that C-foam, and you don't get as many enemies getting on top of you at once. Also, if your sentries do still have a fair amount of ammunition left in them, you can face them towards the south, that way it will deal with shadows who come from that direction. And then with all that done, all you have to do is throw a few fog repellers throughout the room, that way you can actually move around more freely and not everybody's huddled up right next to that fog turbine. Put in the reactor shutdown command, do the reactor verify code afterwards, and then an alarm will trigger, and like I said earlier, this is going to be a class 5 mixed alarm that will spawn in nothing but shadows. So all you need to do is run around, biotracker ping enemies best you can, get all the scans done, work together, or you're going to die together here, haha. And once that sustained scan is finished at the end, you're done. Drop that fog turbine and run. Pick up your sentries on the way and get back to extraction as fast as you can. Your main objective is finished. You have infectious fog everywhere, the level is pitch black darkness, non-stop shadows and shadow giants are going to be spawning in because of the endless alarms going on, and you need to move fast. Now, make sure you're all sticking together, don't have the mentality of every man for themselves, because if somebody falls too far behind you, then the wave can spawn right off of them, right on top of you. And I have had a few runs where I'm running and next thing I know, a shadow giant spawns inside of me and just instantly downs me. So biotracker, keep an eye out, warn your teammates if there are enemies in front of you, and just keep on moving all the way back towards the beginning. Once you get to extraction, throw down a few fog repellers to get rid of the fog, and then disinfect your team as best you can. Assuming you're not all sitting at 20% HP already, you can still save the HP from being drained away by the infection by disinfecting a bit. Then drop down your sentries, and you just have to hold out against a few waves of shadows and shadow giants while you wait for that scan to get up to 100%. But once it does get up to 100, you're done with the level and you've completed R5D1. And that's all there really is to it. As always, if you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, leave it down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, then consider hitting that like button. It helps out the channel and it helps these videos get noticed by people who really need them. And while you're down there, you know I'm already going to say it, but hey, you might as well hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. I also have my own Discord server, so if you want to become part of the community I'm building and play with either me, other people who enjoy GTFO, or just in general chat with others who are GTFO enthusiasts, then hop on in. Link is down in the description. Until next time, keep your eyes out for Rundown 6 teasers, because the days until then are getting smaller and smaller by the moment, and I'll see you all in the next video.